Captain Roderick Walters was a man who had spent most of his life on the front lines. His graying hair, lined face, and stiff joints were badges earned in battles that had left scars on both his body and soul. After decades of service, he was finally nearing retirement, ready to trade late-night emergency calls for fishing trips and lazy mornings. So when the knock came at his door in the dead of night, his first instinct was annoyance, a lingering military reflex he thought he'd left behind. Groggily, he opened the door to find two junior officers in uniform, their faces tense and unsmiling. "Captain Walters," one said, "you're needed at HQ immediately. This is urgent." Roderick grumbled under his breath, shaking his head. "Can a man get a moment's peace? I was just dreaming about somewhere warm and quiet." But as he pulled on his uniform and followed the officers into the chilly night, he sensed that whatever awaited him was no ordinary emergency. This wasn't the first time he'd been called in unexpectedly, but something about the officer's silence made the hair on the back of his neck prickle. When they arrived at the base, Roderick was escorted to a briefing room filled with high-ranking officials, each wearing expressions of grim tension. The air was thick with a sense of urgency he hadn't felt in years. In the center of the room, a large digital display showed images of strange, towering figures, their features harsh and alien. Roderick took a closer look, his curiosity turning into a sinking feeling as he recognized the beings on the screen. They were the Yashnora, a brutal species of alien warlords known throughout the galaxy for their ferocity and unyielding strength. Towering and heavily muscled, the Yashnora were unlike any opponent humanity had faced. They possessed technology and weapons far beyond Earth's capabilities, and their culture celebrated conquest in the most violent sense. News reports had trickled in over recent months about civilizations crushed under the Yashnora's relentless assault, each one leaving behind little more than ruins. Now, it seemed, their gaze had turned to Earth. One of the officials, General Moreland, stepped forward. His voice was steady but lined with strain. "Captain Walters, thank you for coming on such short notice. We're in a situation like no other." He gestured to the display. "The Yashnora have entered our solar system. Our intelligence confirms that their fleet is en route to Earth." The room fell silent as the weight of Moreland's words sank in. Roderick scanned the faces around him. Seasoned officers, scientists, and strategists all appeared haunted, as if they were already mourning what was to come. Roderick crossed his arms, keeping his tone light despite the grim atmosphere. "Well, it's good to know I wasn't dragged out of bed just for old time's sake. What's our game plan here? I'm assuming we're not in a position to simply ask them to go away." A few of the officials exchanged glances, and a low murmur of nervous laughter briefly punctuated the silence. But then General Moreland's expression turned serious. "We're still weighing options, Captain. But, truth be told, none of them look promising. The Yashnora have a track record of eradicating resistance without a second thought. Our best strategies, defensive or otherwise, might delay them, but realistically, they'll tear through us." The statement hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Roderick felt a chill as he grasped the gravity of their predicament. Humanity was staring down a foe that, by all accounts, could not be beaten through traditional warfare. As the council members began debating their options, ranging from surrender to a desperate, all-out attack, Roderick found his mind drifting. He had studied the Yashnora in passing, driven by a curiosity about their brutal efficiency in warfare. Despite their merciless nature, they held an intricate honor code that governed their interactions. To the Yashnora, displays of power and respect were deeply embedded in their culture. It was a gamble, but Roderick felt a flicker of an idea begin to form. Clearing his throat, he spoke up, his voice cutting through the noise. "With all due respect, what if there's a third option we haven't considered?" The room turned to him, a mix of skepticism and faint hope in their eyes. "We know they respect strength, but what if they also respect humility, at least enough to consider a diplomatic approach? If they're as disciplined as we think, they might see reason in a different kind of show of strength, one based on tact instead of force." The council members exchanged bewildered looks, some shaking their heads. To them, Roderick's proposal sounded reckless, if not absurd. But he pushed on, explaining his knowledge of the Yashnora's cultural values and how a genuine act of respect might buy Earth time, if nothing else. Humanity had little left to lose. Even a risky diplomatic mission seemed worth considering in the face of annihilation. After a tense silence, General Moreland nodded thoughtfully. "It's unconventional, Captain, but we're out of conventional solutions." With that, the decision was made, the Council reluctantly agreeing to allow Roderick to lead the mission. As he stood there, the reality of his assignment sank in. This was not the cushy farewell he had envisioned. His final days in uniform would not be spent recounting old stories or quietly fading into the background, but would instead be a last, desperate bid for humanity's survival. The briefing concluded, and Roderick walked out, a quiet determination hardening within him. He was now tasked with something far more dangerous than any battle he'd fought. Yet, beneath the fatigue and worry, he felt a sliver of resolve. If he was to serve Earth one last time, he would do so in a way that none could have expected. Captain Roderick Walters strode through the vast hangar bay, flanked by his small team, a mix of military tacticians, language experts, and cultural analysts. None of them had ever expected to be called diplomats, especially not on a mission like this. Each face held a mixture of fear and steely resolve. Their assignment was clear but fraught with danger. Approach the Yashnora warlord with a level of respect so profound, it might just forestall humanity's annihilation. As Roderick briefed his team on the shuttle ride, he could see the skepticism in their eyes. They'd trained for combat, not negotiation. Yet Roderick knew that beneath their unease lay fierce dedication. "Listen," he said, his tone firm but reassuring. "Our best chance of survival lies in getting the Yashnora to see us as something more than targets. Respect is currency to them. If we show humility and courage, we might just surprise them." The shuttle docked within the enormous Yashnora mothership, a leviathan bristling with weaponry and teeming with alien warriors. As the ramp lowered, Roderick inhaled deeply, steeling himself. Every movement felt scrutinized as rows of Yashnora warriors watched, their towering forms casting imposing shadows. The team moved forward, dwarfed by the hulking figures around them. Leading the procession was Zorkral, the Yashnora warlord himself. Zorkral stood over 8 feet tall, his crimson armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Muscles rippled beneath his armored plating, and his eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence, both calculating and fierce. He radiated authority, the kind that had bent entire civilizations to his will. But Roderick felt no choice but to push forward, sensing that any hesitation would be a fatal misstep. Remembering his studies, Roderick knelt, bowing his head in a calculated show of humility. This was a subservient ritual he'd learned, one that Yashnora soldiers performed before their leaders. Behind him, his team mirrored his actions, each one kneeling in silence. A murmur rose from the Yashnora, their expressions shifting from hostile curiosity to something more akin to interest. Zorkral's piercing gaze lingered on Roderick, a flicker of something almost imperceptible. Was it respect? Crossing his face, the warlord stepped forward, his voice a low rumble. "You humans show deference, yet your kind is weak, fragile. Tell me, why should I let your species live?" Roderick rose slowly, meeting Zorkral's unyielding stare with calm, collected resolve. "We know we cannot match you in strength, Warlord Zorkral. But we offer something different, a position that could benefit the Yashnora's expansion across the galaxy. Humanity may lack your physical might, but we excel in diplomacy, in making connections where others see only division. Our service to you would expand your influence without the need to expend more resources on subjugation." A silence settled over the assembly as Zorkral considered Roderick's words. Around them, Yashnora soldiers exchanged glances, clearly intrigued by this alien who dared to speak directly to their warlord. Roderick maintained a calm exterior, though inside, His heart pounded. He knew he was walking a tightrope. If his offer was interpreted as weakness or manipulation, it could mean instant death for him and his team. Zorkral's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. You believe I would benefit from words and treaties? My kind respects power, Captain Walters, not empty promises. Roderick nodded, acknowledging the challenge while maintaining his resolve. I understand, but words, warlord, can accomplish what weapons cannot. We offer to serve as diplomats, as intermediaries for the Yeshnora. Instead of conquering every world by force, let us extend your influence. Those who resist, you may crush. But for those willing to comply, we can bring them into your fold with minimal effort. The warlord's expression remained unreadable, but Roderick saw a glint of consideration in his eyes. Zorkral motioned for his guards to step back, signaling that he was willing to listen further. Roderick seized the opportunity, his voice steady, unwavering. This arrangement benefits both sides. Humanity retains its autonomy and, in return, expands your reach without needless bloodshed. We ask only for the chance to prove our worth as allies rather than adversaries. After a tense moment, Zorkral inclined his head, a gesture that bordered on a nod. Your proposal amuses me, Captain Walters. Humans are bold. I will give you that. And you have shown me a respect that few have dared. Very well, he declared, his tone resonating through the hall. We shall discuss this further, over a feast. If your words continue to impress, I may yet find a place for your people under our banner. Relief washed over Roderick, though he kept his expression controlled. A feast with the Yeshnora was an invitation rarely extended, and he understood the significance. For now, they had secured a chance, however slim, to negotiate humanity's future. They were far from safe, but this was a first step, a breakthrough that could reshape Earth's destiny. As they were led to the banquet hall, Roderick caught his team's eye, nodding in silent encouragement. They had just crossed a critical threshold, moving from potential enemies to something closer to respected equals in the eyes of the Yeshnora. It was a small victory, but one with the potential to grow into something far greater. The feast that awaited them was an elaborate affair, filled with alien foods and rituals unfamiliar to the human delegation. Yet, seated among the towering Yeshnora warriors, Roderick felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The mission was not yet complete, and there was much to navigate, but for the first time, hope seemed possible. Roderick's heart pounded as he approached the Yeshnora throne chamber, where the warlord Zorkral waited. The walls of the hall loomed tall, casting elongated shadows over the small human delegation. The Yeshnora guards flanking the corridor watched them with a mixture of amusement and disdain, their expressions showing a quiet amusement at the fragility of their human visitors. Roderick kept his gaze steady, reminding himself of the cultural rituals he'd meticulously studied. Every step was calculated, every movement intentional. Any perceived misstep could spell doom. His team followed closely, visibly tense but resolute. They knew what lay before them, an encounter with the most fearsome warlord in the galaxy, and an impossible mission to sway his decision. As they entered the chamber, Roderick's eyes fell upon Zorkral. The warlord's presence dominated the room. He sat upon a massive, intricately carved throne, his dark, armor-clad form exuding an aura of sheer, unyielding power. His eyes, glimmering like embers, seemed to pierce through the dim light, watching Roderick with an intensity that was as calculated as it was intimidating. Suppressing his own fear, Roderick dropped to one knee and bowed his head, a traditional show of deference he had learned was sacred among the Yeshnora. Behind him, his team did the same, each movement synchronized, each bow rehearsed. Silence fell over the chamber as they knelt, a silence so complete it seemed to press down on them, magnifying the weight of the moment. Zorkral shifted slightly in his seat, his gaze fixed upon the kneeling humans, a glint of curiosity breaking through his imposing exterior. He spoke, his voice a low, rumbling growl that reverberated through the chamber. You come here, creatures of Earth, offering your respect. Tell me, Why do you submit yourself so willingly? Roderick lifted his head, meeting the warlord's gaze with unwavering resolve. We kneel not out of fear, warlord Zorkral, but out of respect for a power we acknowledge and honor. We understand that the strength of the Eshnora is vast and unmatched, but we also believe that our unique skills can serve you in a different way. Our people are not strong like yours, but we offer our minds, our diplomacy, and our loyalty as tools for your empire. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then, a murmur rippled through the Eshnora soldiers around them, their amusement shifting to something resembling intrigue. Zorkral narrowed his eyes, studying Roderick's calm expression. Your people are fragile, he replied. What value do words and diplomacy hold when conquest can be achieved by sheer force alone? Roderick took a steadying breath, choosing his next words carefully. Warlord, the Eshnora's might is unquestioned, but an empire sustained purely by conquest expends resources and soldiers with every victory. Humanity offers a different path, one that could extend your influence while conserving your strength. Let us serve as intermediaries, as envoys of your will. We are skilled in negotiation, in bringing others under one banner without the need for bloodshed. We can bring more to your empire than our subjugation alone could offer. Zorkral's face remained inscrutable, but Roderick sensed a shift in the room. The warlord leaned forward, his gaze sharpening. You dare to suggest that your people, weak as they are, can extend the power of the Eshnora? Roderick held his ground, his voice steady. Yes, warlord. Humanity can offer you the loyalty of countless worlds that would otherwise resist you. We present ourselves not as equals, but as willing servants to aid in your vision. Zorkral rose from his throne, his towering form casting an even longer shadow across the room. He stepped down, approaching Roderick, each step resonating with a weight that seemed to shake the ground beneath them. Stopping just before him, he regarded the human with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. His eyes, dark and calculating, searched Roderick's face as though searching for a hidden agenda. Captain Walters, Zorkral said slowly, you amuse me. Your words carry a boldness that most would consider foolish. But I see that you believe in your proposal. He paused, his expression hardening. I do not grant leniency lightly. If I were to accept your offer, understand this. Your people would be bound to serve the Eshnora. Any disloyalty, any betrayal, would lead to your annihilation. Roderick nodded solemnly. We understand, warlord. Humanity would serve with loyalty, knowing that our survival depends on our dedication to your cause. For a long, tense moment, Zorkral's gaze lingered on Roderick, as though weighing the fate of Earth in that singular glance. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, he extended a hand, the gesture formal yet severe. Very well, he said. I will consider your proposal. Tonight, we shall see if your kind can survive in our presence. You will dine with us. As a sign of good faith, Roderick, keeping his composure, accepted the warlord's extended hand, feeling the crushing strength in Zorkral's grip. It would be an honor, warlord. With a flick of his wrist, Zorkral signaled his guards to escort the humans to the banquet hall. The soldiers exchanged wary glances, some with a newfound respect, others still visibly skeptical. Yet there was no mistaking the shift in the air. Humanity had, against all odds, earned a seat at the table. As Roderick and his team were led from the throne chamber, he allowed himself a single deep breath. The night ahead promised no comfort, only an unrelenting test of their resolve and diplomacy. But for now, they had achieved what seemed impossible, a sliver of trust, a fragile hope. In this moment, Roderick knew they'd crossed a line, that Earth's fate had entered a delicate but promising new chapter. The following day dawned over Earth with a sense of cautious relief, the kind that felt almost unfamiliar amidst the tense days leading up to the Eshnora's arrival. Roderick Walters returned home, not with a victorious fleet, but with a peace that was every bit as hard-won. As he stepped back onto human soil, a quiet satisfaction filled him. He had navigated the impossible, securing not only Earth's survival, but also its newfound role within the galaxy. News of the peaceful resolution had spread quickly, sparking disbelief and skepticism that soon gave way to a cautious pride. People struggled to comprehend how their world, once on the brink of annihilation, now held a special place within the formidable Yeshnora Empire. And at the heart of it all stood Captain Roderick Walters, the strategist who had traded brute force for negotiation, showing the Yeshnora, and perhaps humanity itself, that strength didn't always come in the form of firepower. In a quiet chamber in the military base, Roderick met with top officials to report his success. Their faces, once lined with worry, now bore expressions of awe and gratitude. The council members, still wary of what lay ahead, couldn't help but recognize the achievement before them. Captain Walters began, one of the senior commanders, his voice thick with emotion. We had prepared ourselves to mourn a hero. Yet here you are, having returned victorious without a single shot fired. How? He trailed off, his words reflecting a question all of them were asking. Roderick looked around at the faces before him, taking a deep breath as he replied. I had to show the Yeshnora that we were willing to set aside pride for survival. Diplomacy wasn't just our best option, it was our only option. By understanding their culture, their values, we earned a level of respect they don't easily offer. The room was silent, everyone absorbing the gravity of his words. The captain's approach, unconventional as it was, had succeeded in averting the very real threat of annihilation. For a moment, a sense of accomplishment settled over them, a collective realization that humanity had more than just survived. It had earned the recognition of one of the galaxy's most formidable powers. Yet Roderick's work was far from over. The Yeshnora's offer to let her serve as a diplomatic envoy was a double-edged sword. The responsibility was tremendous. Humanity would need to uphold its new position carefully, and Roderick knew this challenge would require a subtlety and dedication that stretched beyond the battlefield. Later that evening, as the world watched his return unfold on screens and broadcasts, a crowd gathered to greet him. Cheers erupted, families with children on their shoulders, soldiers saluting and civilians waving banners. People reached out, some merely wanting to touch the man who had preserved their lives, who had defied the odds to negotiate peace. But behind the cheers and the jubilant faces was something deeper, a recognition of humanity's resilience and adaptability, embodied in this one man's courage. After the public reception, a young officer approached him, eyes bright with admiration. Sir, if I may, how did you know they'd accept diplomacy? I mean, we've all heard about the Yeshnora. They're known for crushing worlds, not negotiating with them. Roderick paused, smiling thoughtfully. I didn't know, son, but I knew that if we presented ourselves with honesty, if we offered them something they hadn't seen before, we might stand a chance. The Yeshnora may be warriors, but even they can see value in allies who are willing to adapt and negotiate. The galaxy is vast. They understand that not every battle is won through strength alone. The officer nodded, visibly moved. Thank you, sir. I think you've shown us all something today. Roderick placed a reassuring hand on the young man's shoulder. Remember this, then. It's not always the strongest who survive, but those who are wise enough to know when to stand firm and when to kneel. As he walked away from the gathering, Roderick felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. This new alliance wasn't a solution, but a beginning, a complex, precarious future for Earth among the stars. The Yeshnora's respect was a prize, but it was one they would have to earn and defend continuously. Roderick knew that humanity's role within this vast galactic stage had only just begun. That night, as he sat in the quiet of his quarters, reflecting on all that had transpired, Roderick understood that his legacy would be more than just a story of one man's bravery. It would be a testament to humanity's courage, intelligence, and ability to thrive even in the most overwhelming circumstances. And he thought with a wry smile, it was proof that sometimes the right words could be as powerful as the mightiest of weapons. In the days to come, Earth would take its place as the diplomatic bridge it had promised to be, navigating treacherous waters between mighty civilizations. And as the Ashnora spread word of their encounter with a worthy Earth, humanity would learn to live up to the formidable expectations now laid before them. Guided by the knowledge that they had allies and enemies alike watching, wondering what the resilient species of Earth would do next.